Morning, 22nd July 2023. We are here in Indo-Tibetan conference on Indo-Tibetan cultural exchange at the National Library Bhasha Bhavan, and I have Assistant Professor in Political Science from Calcutta University, Jigme Lama, Professor Jigme Lama, and he will introduce us to certain areas on raising awareness on political subjects like the autonomy of Tibet and how to restore the Tibetan heritage and culture in a very non-violent way, with compassion, with healing, and with proper ethics. So before I get into that, Jigme, would you like to just introduce how you started your career and where you have done your alma mater from, where you're from actually?
Yeah. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
My name is Jigme Lama, and I am an assistant professor in the Department of Political Science, University of Calcutta. I joined this department in 2016, and prior to which I was completing my PhD from the Jawaharlal Nehru University, specifically from the Center for East Asian Studies, School of International Studies. My thesis looks at challenges to China's legitimacy in Tibet, issues of hegemony and contestation, whereby I looked at the interface between the Chinese political processes inside Tibet and its interaction with Tibetan society, especially with Tibetan Buddhism.
Yeah.
Also, I completed my schooling from Darjeeling, from St. Joseph's North Point, and after that my graduation in history from St. Stephen's College, then post-graduation from JNU, Center for Political Studies.
Yeah.
That is my background.
Yes.
Yeah.
Now, the challenges we face, as we say that we're talking about Buddhism, sometimes it happens that we want to pinpoint on a certain subject and to want to raise awareness about it, like as you said, the challenges faced by the government in exile, His Holiness, in restoration of Tibetan culture and heritage. And we will today later have in the day Professor Venerable Zandung Rinpoche to talk on it. He's a very great figure all over the world. So now coming back to this point, as in Tibetan Buddhism, as you know, when we say a rose is a rose,
Yes.
right? It's tatata, it's the suchness of the things,
Yes.
right? But when we talk about political issues, we want to pinpoint what the issue is and to have a common minimal understanding among people,
Yes.
right? But it sounds and it goes in a way that there is always a distortion of meaning, and people have different opinions about it. So how to gather people together to have that common understanding and to get to the point. What I mean.
Well, regarding getting people on a common ground, I guess it's always difficult to get everyone on a common ground. But then we have an icon like His Holiness the 14th Dalai Lama, who is an apostle of peace, as well as he has done immense work as well as for world peace as well as for Tibet itself. As a matter of fact, he always emphasizes that first and foremost is this harmonious world, not the Chinese harmonious world over here, but more of a brotherhood that His Holiness emphasizes on, as well as on the idea of religious harmony that His Holiness stresses upon. And then the third principle that he believes in is actually working for Tibet. So these ideas of peace, harmony is something that His Holiness has worked throughout his life, and that to a larger extent is the message that Tibet has given to the world, that through a non-violent, peaceful manner we can actually struggle for our own country as well as for the culture and the identity of the Tibetans. We need to understand that in Tibet right now, Tibetans are facing a real threat. Their existence is at stake, and the reason why I'm saying this is because under the current President Xi Jinping, the assault on Tibetan culture has been maximized. This we see especially in terms of the destruction of a number of monasteries, maybe not visible, but then it's been curtailed. The number of monks entering into monasteries and all are curtailed.
Is it in the Eastern Tibet Kham region?
Eastern Tibet Kham region, as we know, the issue with Jango, right, in Eastern Tibet. And then we also have the Tibetan students, especially children as young as 5 to 6 years old, being sent to these boarding schools and been forced to remain there, removed from their family. So when that removal from the family takes place, then they are cut from their culture, and that becomes a major issue. This has been enforced upon Tibetans throughout. So there is also the removal of the Tibetan language as a medium of instruction in schools, which happened. Yes,
it's all over in Tibet.
Now
like
it is somewhat all over Tibet.
Yeah.
But then a couple of months back, I guess a month back or so, I remember clearly a news been brought out by Tibet Watch, which specifically mentioned 3 or 4 schools in eastern Tibet, in Kanze, as well as in Darjeeling, Chinese they call it as Kangting, where schools and all, Tibetan primary schools, and now everything is taught in Mandarin. So the threat to Tibet's existence, especially to the Tibetan identity, is very much real. This is a major problem. Now the question that you had asked, like why is it difficult to a certain extent to bring about a stress upon the political importance of Tibet, right? I guess the reason why is because China is an extremely powerful country. And then also you need to understand that Tibet was always seen as a buffer state, especially by an idea that was started by the British. And it is the British colonial policies and all that has actually shaped the way Tibet is understood right now. And to a certain extent, I see it as a continuation, this particular policy. So this is the main problem. This is the main root of the problem. That is how I feel.
Yes. And one more point which I wanted to focus on is that Buddhism, in fact, has spread widespread all over the world. And if you see the northern part of Buddhism, the Madhyamika, because the Dalai Lama is always talking on the middle way, right? The Madhyamika tradition. Now, that when it went to the north through China, that period of time, Chinese Buddhism was very enriched. We have the 6 patriarchs and Huineng and all that. That goes to Japan, becomes much more flourishing in terms of culture, becomes Zen.
Zen, yes.
Right? Then it goes to California and other states. It starts spreading. Alan Watts and all those people, right, walked on. And that's very similar to what we have, the Advaita tradition, the non-dual tradition here in India, right?
Yes.
Zen is very similar to that. And the Southern Buddhism, if you see, it spread to all the Southeast Asian countries, Thailand, Vietnam, Cambodia, and all that. So Buddhism has made an impact all over the world.
Yes.
Right? And it has originated from India, so it has made impact all over the world. But in terms of the political understanding of it, of how Buddhism can be applied in practical purposes.
Yes.
Right? If you look at the Myanmar situation also, I think that's one of the major points which I would harp on is, should we raise more dialogues with bigger bodies, to have this kind of exchange, like we are having an exchange over here, to raise more of this dialogue. And another important thing is that most of the ancient scriptures which were burned when Nalanda was burned were actually converted into Tibetan language.
Exactly.
So it's been restored there.
Yes,
if that is gone, then I think the wisdom we are talking about, the perennial wisdom, much of that will be lost.
That's true. And this is the other danger that Tibetan culture and Tibetan identity is facing, because Tibetan identity is closely linked to Tibetan Buddhism or Vajrayana Buddhism, as you are saying, brought about by Pema Sambhava, right? Of course, we have a lot of the Tibetan materials been brought to India, especially by Mahapandit Rahul Sankrityayan. Yeah, and I guess that is one way of preserving that preservation that has taken place. But of course, yes, this dialogue that you're mentioning with larger, bigger bodies and all that becomes very, very important. That needs to be maintained. And in this context, I guess His Holiness has always tried or attempted in doing this, whereby he is seen to be holding this intercultural or interreligious harmony meets, as well as these kind of small conferences and all. As a matter of fact, a couple of years back, I was actually one of the volunteers in one of these interfaith meetings that was held in Delhi. So it actually helps, because religion, faith is a personal matter, right? And in that way, when it becomes a personal matter, it has a greater impact, more than politics. Of course, we can always debate by saying that politics is personal or the personal is politics, but then religion has a much more deeper meaning to it. And all religions, irrespective of whatever they are, they all preach the same thing. That is what His Holiness says: love and compassion and brotherhood.
Yes, absolutely.
Problem is when it gets politicized, then it becomes an issue, as always. But His Holiness right now, as well as in the coming years, he will emphasize on this particular aspect. His main message is that the main message or the main idea of religion is actually peace. It is about brotherhood and compassion.
Yes, absolutely. I agree with you. And one more point before we end it is that His Holiness has always tried in the last, I think, two decades, to bring in the scientific,
Yes,
side into Buddhism, because
Absolutely.
if we can't ignore science,
Yes,
right?
yes,
The progress
exactly.
in science. So quantum mechanics and double slit experiment, all these things are giving a different picture of reality.
Yes, that's
different
true.
picture of reality. It's not the hard Newtonian Cartesian dualistic reality that we understand as it is. It's much beyond that, and there are talks about even like bit from it, right? So bits of information, and then you have the physical reality, and then beyond the information there is the void, the clear light of the void. So this entire focus of science can also help to gain people's what I would say, people's understanding about it. That we are not talking about something esoteric religion and something like that.
Exactly.
It's absolutely diagnostic.
Yes.
Buddha was doing diagnostics.
Yes, it's absolutely
Right?
Absolutely.
It's like a doctor would do.
Yes.
And I think then we get a kind of a structure
Yes.
which is aligned with the progress mankind is having
Absolutely,
now.
absolutely. Yeah, I agree completely with you. Even though I've not really looked much into the connection between Madhyamaka philosophy and quantum physics, but then the little that I know and the little that I've read, I've understood this idea that as Buddha, as you are mentioning, was a person who was very practical in his approach.
Absolutely.
This practicality has been actually taken up by many of Tibetan Buddhist masters, especially in terms of understanding the mind. So even His Holiness emphasizes on this a lot, where he states that Buddhism actually helps in healing the mind.
Yes.
So this calming the mind, healing the mind, that becomes important. Whether it is someone like Yongyu Mingyu Rinpoche, right, or it is someone like Tongse Khyentse Rinpoche, they have always emphasized on how to tame your mind. Because this idea of taming, which Padmasambhava brought about inside Tibet, right, or minding, that to a larger extent was also somewhat very, very related to the mind in terms of understanding the mind and trying to figure out how to bring about a more peaceful mind.
Yes, absolutely right. I agree completely with you. And do you have any interactions with Matthew Rika?
Not really, not really. I've just read few of his works.
I think he's doing great work.
Yes,
he's doing great work.
I've read his work on Dingo Khyentse Rinpoche, the previous incarnation. Yes. Thank you so much.
Yeah, bye bye.
Thank you.
Take care.
Thank you.